Welcome to The Clean Slate, a podcast where we chat about facilities management, commercial cleaning, and keeping the working world safe, clean, efficient, and free from risk. I'm your host, Trista Sobek. This is Trista Sobek with The Clean Slate, and thank you for joining us today. Today we have a really interesting conversation for you. We get into some philosophical situations and questions with Geoff Snavely of Millicare, and where we talk about floor care, and we get into a little bit of interesting things about the best way to clean your floors and why it's important. But mostly we talk about philosophy and how vendors can be better partners for facility managers. And what does that mean? Because we're all trying to do the same thing at the end of the day, which is just make the world a better place. So we talk about how that can happen. We talk a little bit about Geoff's book and how to put that into practice. And just being better humans to our fellow humans. So really philosophical, heavy discussion today. I hope you enjoy it. Cool. So what's the first thing you did this morning?
Wow. So I have strange and ill-advised sleeping habits. So I haven't set an alarm in years. And if I wake up and see a 4, I just get up, right? So got up at 4 this morning. And so the first thing I did, coffee. I always drink coffee right away. And then, I was at the gym. I don't know. 6 o'clock this morning. I was at the gym. How about you?
Oh, the first thing I did. So I got up and then I started trying to get my child up, my 13-year-old, who he hates getting up. It's a big battle every morning. And I think it's just the age. He's like, don't yell at me. I'm like, I wouldn't have to yell at you if you would simply just get up. But he does not simply want to get up. So we're working on that. Next year will be high school. So he'll have to get up earlier. So hopefully he gets into a good groove. And I think he's over 8th grade because he's 6'3". So he's just like, he looks like this adult in this walking around this school, and that's got to feel a little awkward. So we're at this awkward stage. So I got him up, and coffee, of course.
Yeah.
Definitely coffee, always coffee.
You drink it black?
I like to work it.
Me too. Yeah. I just started drinking coffee a couple of years ago. When I started drinking, and I was like, either I like coffee or I don't. Right. So I started drinking because putting all that stuff in it kind of makes you go, do you really like coffee, or do you, or are you trying to disguise the taste? And,
or is it the sugar? Do you like the sugar, or do you like coffee?
So I drink it black. I drink lots of it. Oh, I had chocolate cake for breakfast. That was probably the first thing I did this morning.
Well, that sounds like a great way to start the day.
I have a really bad addiction to sweets and baked goods and stuff like that. So,
well, as long as you went to the gym, it's all
that's
about
why
balance,
I go to the gym. So,
I do want to back into this idea that you wrote this book, and as you and I discussed earlier, I'm trying to find this intersection of where the book and the person and the floor care all come together. So I would love to try to find that, because there has to be some kind of intersection.
There is, but it wasn't intended. So right, okay. So right. Actually, interestingly enough, if I talk about the book by default, I will talk about myself, right? So maybe maybe we go there. And by the way, I hate talking about myself. So this will be the least favorite part of our conversation for me. I despise this, but I'll do it. And that's why I'd rather talk about it through the context of the book. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. It makes it more interesting too, because then people can relate to some of the topics that you're talking about in the book.
Yep. So I'm a big start with why person. Like Simon Sinek, that book, I read it years ago, and it fundamentally changed the way that I view so many things in this world. That idea of kind of understanding your greater purpose and sort of starting there with everything that you do. And so I, over time, decided that I needed my own why statement. And I've thought about it a lot with my company also, and I, have that sort of in mind. But I wanted a personal why statement. And so I went through that process and I came up with one that I've sort of rallied around for years. And that is to make a positive difference in people's lives so that they feel motivated to become the best possible version of themselves. And you go, well, all right, what does that mean, right? And that's why what Simon Sinek talks about is you have a why, then you have a how, and then you have a what, right? And so, once you have your why, then you start going, well, how do I bring that to life? And then what are the specific things that I do to bring that to life? Writing a book was really a what for me in terms of a specific way that I could bring my why to life. And, I've met a lot of people over the years. And, they say, I want to write a book one day, or I've got a book in me, or I have all these ideas. And I guess I was one of those people. And, but I don't know, life goes on, and you go, well, when's that actually ever going to happen? And then I am a fanboy of an author named Mark Manson. Do you know Mark Manson?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
He wrote a book. He's written a few, but he wrote one called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F, right?
Oh, I've read that one. Yes. Okay. So yeah, I know the title over the author's name. Yeah. So yes.
I love Mark Manson, and I am his biggest fanboy. But in his book, he talks about something, it's called the do something principle. Where, a lot of us, if there's something you want to do, a lot of us, typically what we do is we kind of wait around to be inspired, and then inspiration turns into motivation turns into action. And Manson, in his own Manson way, says, F that. Those are the three things, but they're out of order. Do something first. Then, anything, start small. Want to write a book? Okay, write a sentence, write a paragraph. You want to get in shape? Put on your shoes and go for a walk. Whatever it might be, just do something, and then you will have an emotional response to that something, and that can become inspiration. Or you can go, I didn't like that, and then you just realize that's not something you want to do at all. But then inspiration that leads to motivation, which leads to more action. So it is those three things. So anyway, several years ago, I said, all right, I got a bunch of notes and thoughts, and I had physical notes, and I had electronic, I had stuff in my head, and I started writing an outline, and I just fell in love with writing. I don't know, it sparked something, and I just loved writing. It had nothing to do with wanting to write a book or sell a book, and I almost didn't care if it was good or bad. It was more like, am I writing something that can make a difference? Does it fit my why? Is there something here that could make a positive difference for somebody? And I looked at it through that lens, and you just kind of write. You do a chapter, you do two chapters. Next thing you know, you have a book, and that's sort of what I did. But the people in mind for me were leaders, sales professionals, coaches, consultants. People that advise others about life and work. Those are the people I had in mind, and these are the facilitators of betterment. That's a term that I came up with. And I love that term because, this idea of betterment, just getting to a better place, I think is powerful. And then a facilitator is someone that makes that happen. And so wrote the book, put it out there. And then I started to realize very quickly that within my company and my professional world, there was a tremendous amount of intersection, like the circles in a Venn diagram. Like all of a sudden I realized those circles can not just overlap a little bit, they can overlap a lot. Because professionally, there's so many, whether they be clients or whether they be people within my network, leaders, sales professionals, coaches, consultants, that the concepts from that book I really felt like had implications for a lot of people within my professional networks. Specifically, facilities managers or customers that we think of how many of those hats they wear on any given day,
Yeah, you're dealing with people. It's about
Absolutely.
people. It's about people and resources, and those people live lives. I mean, that's one of the reasons I think facilities management is so interesting, because at the end of the day, it's not about the facilities. You're taking care of the facilities for the people. So hence this podcast. So I think that's one of the reasons I was really drawn to you to talk to you, because I think inherently I felt that I understood what you were kind of going for there.
Yeah, and it's been great because, like, there's an analogy out there of like a bike. Think about a bike, right? Where you got a back wheel and a front wheel, and if you think about a bike, like the back wheel of a bike could be your technical skills, your knowledge, your credentials, like stuff and then the front wheel is all the soft skills. Relationship building and communication and trust and trustworthiness, problems, like all these, leadership, empathy. So with the bike analogy, if you have nothing but a back wheel and it starts to go, but you can't steer it, you're going to drive off a cliff or run into a wall, right? If you have nothing but a front wheel, with all those soft skills that I was just talking about, and you can steer, but there's no back wheel, it doesn't go anywhere, right? So you need both, right? And so, I think what I'm hearing a lot from facilities managers and property managers, legal administrators, the people that we work with, our clients and within our networks, there's so much information and knowledge out there that helps you build your back wheel. But the front wheel is tough. I mean, there aren't as many really good resources out there to help people develop those skills. And I feel like that's an area I can help make a difference. The stuff that's in my head, the stuff I'm passionate about, it's front wheel stuff, and it helps people to be able to steer their bike a little bit better.
What are some of those things specifically that you think are hard for folks in facilities management to learn?
Well, I'll tell you where I'm spending a lot of time these days. And the reason I hesitated is because the answer is it depends, right? And because I think every facilities manager that I know, everyone's different. Everyone's unique. They have their own strengths and they have their own development areas. So I am hesitant to make some sort of sweeping. But I'll tell you an area that I'm spending a lot of time in these days is trust and trustworthiness. Yeah. But even within that, there's a lot that goes into that, and how you go about improving your own trustworthiness and how you can, develop more trust because there's two parts to a trusting relationship. You need to be trustworthy, but then you also need to trust the other person, right? And so, but I'm seeing that more and more these days, especially with everything going on in the workplace and the return to office. the things you don't talk about, it seems like today, is you don't talk about religion, politics, and return to office, right? Because those are very polarizing. Everybody has strong opinions, and you just kind of, you don't go there. But I mean,
well, and a lot of people, you have to go there, right? There comes a time, but you're right. It feels like a lot of times we're all just kind of dancing around this idea. And then it just becomes like, okay, well, is your workplace flexible? Are they flexible? And then, so we're continuously dancing around that idea. So you're spot on.
There's no doubt. And so this whole, are people in the office? Are they not in the office? Remote, hybrid, all these different operational models. But ultimately, what I hear a lot, whether directly or indirectly, as I'm in buildings, is kind of, where is everybody? Return to office has happened. Every organization for the most part has said, here's what we're doing. Here's our policy. Yet the conversation still seems to be ongoing about, okay, but still, where is everybody? And when you start peeling those layers of the onion back, what a lot of those issues are rooted in trust. They really are. And I think you have employees kind of going, I trust or I don't trust my organization. You have organizations and companies kind of going, I trust or don't trust our employees to make good on the policies that we have. And what do you do about all that? And so I think really understanding what trust and trustworthiness means and what it consists of, and getting an understanding of where you're strong and where you need to get better. It's powerful. I really think it's powerful. And a lot of it is some of it is like rational, technical type of there's a rational component to it. Things like credibility and reliability, those are very rational. But then there's emotional and psychological components to it too, around like intimacy and self-orientation. So we could spend a long time talking about trust, but that is, to answer your question in a roundabout way, that's where I'm spending a lot of my time these days in terms of skills. I'm trying to help facilities managers with, I guess, if I'm ever asked. I mean, you can never have enough.
And it's it's interesting that you mentioned that it comes down to trust, because that is such a personal thing and personal aspect. It's like when you hire somebody, you don't know that you can trust them right away. So it's hard to make this blanket statement that, okay, we're all going to be in the office 3 days a week or 2 days a week, whatever it is, because it really depends on the person. But then can you make, statements and rules for everybody when you can't trust everybody? So then it goes back, well, how do you hire people that you can trust?
Yeah, so, and it's so situational too, trust. But we tend to use it as this big statement about like, I trust this person, or I trust this company, or I don't. When the fact is, you may trust them with some things, but not with others. Like, I trust my best friend with so many things, but if I need brain surgery, I don't trust him to do it, because he doesn't know how. He's not a brain surgeon, right? He doesn't know. It's not that he wouldn't want to do it, or if he could, he would. I could count on it, but he doesn't know how. So I can't trust him. That's not an indictment on his character, because there's a million other things I can trust him with, so, but, But in the world of facilities management in the workplace, I think you can never have enough empathy. So I think those are skills that can be developed. Listening skills, I think, we need to get better and better and better with listening. But where I can probably help people the most, it's two things. One, asking better questions, which ties in, because the listening part of it, like, okay, you ask great questions, but if you're not listening, who cares, right? Like if a tree falls in the forest, right? But the other part of it is mindset. And I talked about, I think I mentioned a Venn diagram a minute ago, right? And I probably talk to people about Venn diagrams every day. And it is becoming more and more the way I just see the world, or I see relationships. This idea of like, okay, Trista, here's a sheet of paper, draw a circle on it. And in that circle, write down everything that's important to you, everything that you value, right? Not your morals or your ethics, but like the stuff that really matters to you. And I'll do the same thing. We compare our circles, and where do we have overlap, right? Like where, so some people call that shared interest, right? I call it mutual concern. That's what I wrote about in my book. But it's being able to recognize that, like where we have overlap in our relationships, and really sort of leaning into that, right? But that's a mindset thing. If you go into any relationship or any situation with wanting to identify and expand mutual concern, when you work on things that are truly win-win, that's magic, right? Because anytime you're working on something that has the word lose in it, like if it's win-lose, like good for you, bad for me, or lose-win, like good for me, bad for you, it's not sustainable. And a lot of this sounds like common sense, but I'm realizing more and more that as I talk with people in the workplace, facilities managers and others, like these are real skills that you can help people develop. Like, how do you develop mutual concern? Like, what does that look like? Because you're not actually going to hand someone a sheet of paper and say, hey, you fill out your circle and I'll fill out mine, then we'll compare notes. But it can be done in the context of conversations and relationships in general. So I think that's one thing. And then the second, like I said, is asking better questions. And this, what I wrote about in my book was, the 10 questions that matter. And those are questions that are really intended to help people break through surface discovery into the stuff that really matters, the stuff that can make a difference, the stuff that challenges the status quo and can create some real meaningful impact, So.
Do you have a favorite question? I know they probably all matter and they all probably build on something and they're getting to the point and the root of something. But do you have a favorite question that you're like, this is my favorite question. This is what really matters to me here at this point? Or
Yeah.
Do you have to read the book to
no,
get
God,
the questions?
No. And by the way, that's the one thing I'm not like. I when I wrote a book, I said, if one person reads it and it makes a difference in their life, I'm good. That's all I wanted to do. So with this idea of like, for me trying to sell books or promote books, it's not, I clean floors for a living and that's what I do. And so, but there's my favorite question. And even since you and I started, talking here recently, over the weeks, I've probably asked you this several different ways, but I like asking why. I start with why, right? And having a why statement, but I am passionate about that question, not to be annoying. But for me, it is critical to fundamentally understand purpose, cause, reason. And if you can really understand why something is happening or why we should do something or not do something or why this happened or that, to me, it's everything, And so that's my favorite. And I saved that one for last in the book. But the one, what if questions? So asking what if is like an envisioning exercise, to help people like think about how potential scenarios could play out. So you say, well, what if we did this? And another way to ask what if would be like an if then. Like if fill in the blank, this happens, then what will happen? So I think those are important. Not to get too philosophical, but in today's world, society, another type of question I think we need to be asking more of is what I call other side questions, to look at things through the other lens, so much closed-mindedness out there. I mean, return to office. We talk about religion, politics, and return to office. I think one of the reasons that return to office is so polarizing and so sort of emotionally charged for people these days is because we're not asking those other side questions enough. That I think we're not really looking at things through other people's perspectives.
Right.
And it's
right. Like working parents or, and understanding, what happens during the day. And we all have, doctor's appointments that we need to take care of. And those work from home days are like gold because it's like, okay, well, I'll get up at 3 or 4 whenever, I don't have to worry about driving in, which can be very stressful depending on where you live. We were talking about LA earlier, like Phoenix is getting out of control with traffic. And that's a very stressful time. So if you can just say like, okay, I'll just work a little bit and I'll go to my doctor's appointment, and kind of have that flexibility. We had a taste of that, I think. And people are just like, I like to live my life. We learned how to live our lives again. But you do have to have empathy and you do have to be able to, also then goes back to trust, trust that people are going to do the right thing. And not just go to the beach or go to Disneyland for the day when they're supposed to be working.
And I think sometimes in the absence of not really understanding the other side, we fill those voids with kind of the worst case scenario. Like we start assuming things are happening that may or may not be happening, and so I think this came up recently. And I've been having this thought now for a couple of years that, 4+ years ago, like when did and I don't like using absolutes, but I'm going to say everybody. Like when did everybody hate their job so much? When did everybody dislike going to the office so much? When was every boss or leader like this evil tyrant? Because it seems like that's what you're hearing a lot these days. And on the other side, like, when did every employee, if no one was watching, they went to the beach, or they did anything other than what they were supposed, like all this, we live in this world of extremes, and I think
It's the trope. I think it's the trope. If I think of The Simpsons, the father who's just kind of an idiot and he hates his job, we're all these one-dimensional characters. So we all hate our jobs. We all hate our bosses. We all hate what we do. We come home, we tune out. And then, so I think those tropes just get played out over and over and over again on social media. And we're not tropes. Like we forget, like, a trope is the easiest way to explain, or a stereotype is the easiest way to explain what's going on in somebody's life from a story point of view. So we use those and we rely on them way too much, and we forget that we're people with very multi levels.
I think that's an excellent point. And it's more nuanced, isn't it? Right? Like reality is very nuanced. And
extremely, we forget that.
We do forget it, and I don't know why, but I think it's because it's hard. Understanding nuances is difficult. It's more convenient just to go to those extremes or those.
It's like shorthand.
That's right.
Shorthand way of talking and communicating.
Absolutely, and then you can kind of. It's easier to blame other people, when you put them in that box, and,
absolutely. Yeah.
So So I do think the other side questions of getting that other perspective is really important. And then the other question, I think, and this ties into what we're talking about, and I call these so what questions. And look, if you're talking to someone, you say, so what? You're not going to get a great reaction. So asking a so what question probably needs to be, phrased differently than so what. But it's a way of challenging, relevance and impact and substance of a particular situation. So you hear people a lot. We see it out there constantly. We'll go back to this return to office or what's going on in the workplace. There's studies and research that say, I don't know, fill in the blank, whatever side you're on or whatever your perspective is, you're going to find some data that's going to say this. And you could take that at face value or however someone is telling you how to interpret it, or you could challenge it through a kind of a so what type of question of well, what does that mean? Or is it relevant?
Is it just noise? Does it matter?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because because I think what can happen is we see things, then we're told things, and we go, oh, well, this must be the way that it is. Where sometimes you need to stop and you need to kind of critical thinking. That's another thing. We sort of, I think we can all, there needs to be more critical thinking out there. Not just to be a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian, but to actually think about things critically and wondering, what does this actually mean? And I think we all need to be doing that with some of the research and studies and data that's out there and what people tell us it means. And by the way, the first part of critical thinking is saying, is that even true?
Or is that true for me? Is that true for my reality?
Right. Yep. And just because something's true doesn't mean it matters. Doesn't mean that it's relevant. Doesn't mean that it applies at all to whatever thing we're working on together. So anyway, that's more than you wanted to know, but those are some of the questions that matter that I probably spend the most time swimming in these days.
Right. Tell me a little bit about Millicare and floor care. And, this gets back to the back tire, not the front tire, but the back tire, and why Millicare and what do you do for them?
I love that you just brought the tire analogy back.
Call back.
That's awesome. I love that because I think I can actually talk about Millicare to you through that lens of a bike, back tire and front tire. So let me see if I can do that. I've never really done that. This will be interesting. So from a back tire standpoint, from a technical perspective, Millicare, floor and textile care, commercial floor and textile care. My company, we were the first Millicare company. We're the largest Millicare provider in the network, and we've been in business for 35 years, right? But Millicare is an international network of floor and textile care providers. And the value proposition, I guess, or at least the technical part, the back wheel of our value proposition with carpet care specifically is rooted in dry extraction. Now, how much do you know about carpet cleaning? Or, I mean,
I know that I had a Bissell wet cleaner when I got my first dogs, and you have to clean up everything, and watching the cleaning with the wet and everything was very satisfying, and it's important to have.
Right. So we can do a share screen right now, and I can give you a 50-slide PowerPoint presentation on the history of carpet cleaning, which I'm sure would be fascinating. But I'll keep it. I'll do my best to sort of make this as simplistic as I can. But our Millicare uses proprietary chemistry that is exclusive to the Millicare network, but it is a dry extraction carpet cleaning process. So, and most people, when they think of carpet cleaning or shampooing, it's wet extraction. So you're putting a lot of water and moisture into carpet and vacuuming it away, that extraction process uses water as the vehicle to remove dirt and soil from the carpet, right? We use a dry extraction process where we use a low moisture synthetic polymer, right, that gets agitated into the carpet. It attaches to the dirt and soil and then is vacuumed away.
So there's no wet after you're done. You don't have to stay away from
moisture. That's right. There's a light pre-spray that's used. There's a moisture content in the polymer that's applied, but it attaches, adsorbs, we call it, and then it's vacuumed away. So it is a form of deep extraction recognized by the Carpet and Rug Institute and all those things. But you go, well, why is that important? So what, right? We were talking about so what earlier. So what? Well, so several reasons. From an environmental standpoint, when you're not using water to clean your carpet, that is a tremendously powerful story from a planet and sustainability standpoint, right? Really, really, really important. Our process uses a lot, significantly less electricity than wet extraction and other cleaning methods. Using Millicare can help you if you're going for LEED certification. Using Millicare could help you earn points in certain credits.
Very important these days.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then there's other third-party certifications that kind of. We've said this for decades, and I believe it's more true today than ever. We have the strongest environmental story in the industry when it comes to cleaning carpet, which is a great thing to be able to say. Right. The other part of dry extraction from a technical back wheel standpoint that's really important. So if the analogy that has been used, and I'm hesitating to do this because it feels so cliche at this point, but you've never heard it, so I'll say it to you. So it's almost like, imagine washing your hair, right? And then not rinsing it. Okay. So put shampoo in your hair and then you just go out and do what you're doing. The water in your hair dries, but what gets left behind is the detergent, is the shampoo. So wet extraction, when you are putting chemicals into water and then putting that mix into the carpet and then vacuuming it away. If you've ever, touched carpet after it's been wet extracted and other forms of cleaning carpet, it's still wet. Well, that wetness is a mixture of water and chemicals. The water dries, but what gets left behind is detergent. That's right.
And it feels weird. Your carpet's never the same after you get your carpet professionally cleaned.
Yes. And so then when people start walking on it, it's pulling dirt off their shoes like a magnet, that sticky residue. So the carpet resoils faster, which means you need to clean it more, and it's going to ugly out quicker. So this ties into the environmental story because you can actually clean less often using dry extraction. It's like a paradox. Like your carpet can look better by cleaning less. That's interesting. But the other thing is it'll make your carpet last longer because it won't ugly out as fast. And that's a huge environmental benefit. That if we can make your carpet last 10, 15, 20, we clean carpet today that we were cleaning 25 or 30 years ago. So, wow, you're keeping a lot of carpet out of the landfill, and that's a tremendous story. So, other back wheel stuff, and a lot of other companies do this, but we started it, and you walk a building. You talk to people about traffic patterns and how the space is used, and then you color code floor plans, and then you assign cleaning frequencies based on the way the space is used, as opposed to just coming in and going, hey, we're going to clean all your carpet once a year, all your carpet twice a year. That's not optimizing your budget, and certainly not aligning a maintenance. That's exactly right. So it's a customized approach to floor care, right? So that's some of the back wheel stuff. Now, the front wheel stuff would be emphasizing the care, floor care, Millicare. Okay. There's a part of me that says, if I'm a floor care company, of course I can make your floors look good. Right? Like if I can't do that, I shouldn't be in business. So it's almost like it's a prerequisite that we can clean your floors and they're going to look a lot better when we leave than when we got there. Right? So, but the care part of it goes beyond clean. Like, yes, I understand you want your floors to look better. We got that. That is ante to play this game. But to a facilities manager, to one of our contacts, the questions that we ask and what we try to understand is, how can we make your life easier? What problems can we solve in your workplace, right? That really are going to make a compelling, meaningful difference to you, your employees, and all of the stakeholders in this workplace.
I think that's such an important point for all vendors of everything to take into consideration and really get that point home where they're talking to a client about the care part. And bringing that extra instead of looking at the bottom line, because I think so many times people just want to look at the price and say, no, I'm going to go with the cheapest. And, that value comes out in the long run. Like you said, you cleaned carpet that you put in, 30 years ago, and that value is huge. So I think if more people more vendors look to the lens of that caring aspect or that longevity and that quality, in the end, our facilities are just going to be that much better and stand the test of time over time.
Absolutely. I think for whatever product or service a vendor provides, you don't want to minimalize or diminish that product or service, right? Like, because it serves a function. Those products or services, they are solving a problem, right? But I think that where we can become trusted advisors for our clients and real valued resources is to go beyond, whatever that product or service does, the back wheel stuff, and to help them think more holistically about their workplace and what's going on in that workplace experience. And how can we help them? Maybe it's not even something that we do. Maybe they have a need that we can't specifically address for them, but we can help them. We can be a facilitator to help them get an answer, to get a solution to that problem.
And I think because of vendors' networks, you could tap into somebody else and help them. So I think, I love that a lot. I think that's what most vendors of a facility should be doing, is going above and beyond that way.
Yeah, it's that idea. It's kind of it's a concept in trust-based selling of focus on the relationship, not the transaction. And I've been around a lot of salespeople for a lot of years. And they all say the same thing. I am a relationship salesperson. Right? I've never met a salesperson that goes, I am a transactional salesperson and all I want to do is get the deal. No one says that. And then you spend time with them around clients and their behavior, and their actions don't necessarily support the idea of I'm a relationship salesperson, because it's all about the transaction. It's all about, trying to get a deal done. And to this conversation we're having, if you're truly focused on the relationship, then all you're trying to do is figure out how can I help you? How can I help you? Whether it's me specifically or my company, or whether I'm getting you connected to someone else, I want to understand what your needs are, the proverbial pain point, and I want to be a resource to help you get to that better place. And that's a facilitator of betterment. By the way, salespeople are incredibly influential facilitators of betterment.
They can be
if they want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And here our Venn diagram comes flipping back around with trust. So I love that. Cool. So how can people, what is one way? I mean, we kind of just discussed it with trying to help solve people's problems or listening. What's another way that somebody can be a facilitator of betterment?
I'm going to go back to that do something principle. I think you've got to find a situation that needs improvement, that needs to get better, whether it's something you're working on yourself or it's something you're working on with a team or someone else, and just start working on it. And it starts with mindset. Right? It starts with this idea of like, I'm going to approach this situation in a way that all stakeholders involved benefit, right? Like it is all about a win-win or win-win-win-win, however many people are involved, right? So you got to go in with that mindset, right? I'm here to help solve problems. I'm here to help everyone get to a better place, And then from there, this idea of understanding your own trustworthiness in a situation, like where do you stand in the eyes of others in that situation? Where is trust? Starting with your own trustworthiness, and then what are you doing to enhance trust on the other side? What are you? Sometimes the best way to get trust is to give it. That you're going to go first in the relationship. Otherwise, everyone's sitting around kind of waiting. Like, do you trust me? Do I trust you? I don't know. So maybe you go first. And so, but do what you can. Right mindset. Make sure that you're establishing, building, growing trust in that relationship. And then I just think the best way to understand where someone is or where a situation is and where it needs to be is by asking questions. And not for the sake of asking questions, asking a question because it's going to help you gain a deeper level of understanding. Right. Right.
And I think one of the things as you're talking, I keep thinking about, it's really you have to get rid of the ego. You have to get your own ego out of the way because that's how you solve a problem. So, which makes me think that facility managers really need to read some philosophy books. That might be the front wheel, the front wheel to understand that philosophy and tap into who they are and go that way.
Absolutely. And I think, the Venn, if you think of any workplace, a very common Venn diagram is actually 3 circles, right? So you'd have the facilities manager kind of in their role. You'd have the employee that they're working with on their workplace experience, or they're supporting them, an internal customer, I guess. And then you have the organization.
Oh, there you
right?
go. Yeah.
And where is the intersection of those 3 circles? because in any situation where something is good for one person or two, but not all three, it's not sustainable. It's just not. And that's where I think a lot of what we're dealing with in return to office, that's where we're failing. And that's where we are really struggling, is that people are playing in the parts of their circles where there's no overlap. So, hey, this is good for me, not good for you. It's not sustainable. Or this is good for you, not good for me. It's not sustainable. It's just not. So where can we find common ground?
Yeah. And maybe it simply starts with an exercise of just drawing 3 circles, and then having your why around it. I'm kind of visualizing this whole.
Yeah. And I get overly philosophical sometimes. Like, there's a difference between middle ground and common ground. Middle ground says everybody compromises, which means the only way you find middle ground is if you give up something and I give up something. Common ground is finding those things that are good for both of us, or all 3 entities, facilities manager, or, a workplace facilitator of betterment, the employees they support, and the organization. Finding those things that we have in common and really just digging in on those and making those what we rally around together. So that would be my recommendation for people. And I'm happy to help. I love this stuff. And if anyone in your audience has something in mind and they want to kind of start talking about, because you and I are talking at a very sort of high level now. It almost sounds, it sounds maybe a little too philosophical, or a little too, I don't know what the word is, but at some point you got to get into tactics. But the problem with tactics sometimes, like, it's situation specific. Like, it would be disingenuous, inauthentic of me to start sharing with you and your audience like specific tactics they should be using for a situation because I don't know anything about that situation. So there's no way I could say, well, here's what you need to go do, because I don't know that it would be effective or resonate. But I can promise you that mindset, trust building, and asking the right questions and listening. You do those 3 things, good things will happen. I promise.
I love that. I think that's a good place to end. I think that's awesome. I think there's enough there. We talked about floor care. We talked about your book. We talked about Venn diagrams, and just trying to be the best human possible that you can be. I think that's really, really relevant in this day and age.
Trist, I think it's great what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think that, for you to try to bring this type of conversation to the workplace and to, all of these stakeholders that we're talking about, I really think it's important, focusing on some of this front wheel stuff. I really think it's giving people tools, not just this conversation. I'm just saying in general, the fact that you're trying to have these conversations and bring them to those contacts and into the world of the workplace, it's important. So thank you.
Enjoying the podcast? Leave a review. To otherwise support our podcast, please share and follow us on your favorite streaming platform. You can also visit our website to find show notes and more info on each episode at www.openworksweb.com/podcast. Want to be a guest on an upcoming podcast? Check out the information in the description to apply. We'll see you next time, and remember, keep it clean.